And good evening, and welcome to Gator's Garage, the home of all things historical gaming in the wonderful city of Savannah, Georgia. I'm here again with our friend Patrick Ballinger of HMGS and Huracan, and we're going to talk about everybody's current favorite subject, the version 3 rulebook, and various leaks that are making their way out, and various topics that are open for discussion. So, Patrick, I'm going to kind of just let you take off. I think what we were initially discussing was some of the Army rules are being adjusted. Something like the U.S. is going to lose their free movement, but they're going to get at least I didn't we didn't talk about this, but I saw somebody else said U.S. is going to lose their no penalty for movement, but they're going to get the
Yeah.
same rule as the British, and that's the +1 for every 3 firing.
Well, first off, the Warlord has kind of started letting the information out a little bit more and trying to equip the raiders to be able to start sharing information, get the community excited, start being able to start planning to do demos and start gearing up for just a great time because, at Huracan, we're going to have the, third edition demos. We're going to have the, two charity armies that are going to be built for the new third edition. So literally, people are going to be able to walk away with a repainted army and ready to start rolling dice. And and I think like talking about some of the new special rules, yes, there is a lot of changes out there. Starting at the top, I know we kind of talked about it before we went on camera, was the Germans. And we really didn't see a whole lot of change in Blitzkrieg. Now with the officer being able to get 4 order dice and now able to get a 5th, that's going to be nice with that advanced officer. Hitler's buzzsaw, extra shot with the machine gun. So imagine those machine gun teams now being able to dish out 7 shots. And, and even the tanks are going to be able to squirt out a little bit more on the German side. So
Right.
that's going to be pretty tasty right there, for German players. Yeah. The initiative training, really, that's the one that probably took the biggest hit in the change. And that was where really it's only going to be affected by the sniper rules, which, those are already out. Those are already public. We don't really need to beat, that horse to death right now.
No.
Now with the
Right.
U.S., I know the big question is what has changed, and that's the fire and
Yeah.
maneuver. The fire and maneuver has changed. They've flipped it now to every 3 men you get an extra shot, not the -1 to move and shoot. So the U.S. are going to basically be on the same level as everybody else when it comes to shooting. They still got their gyro stabilizers and their tanks. So you're going to really start rocking it when you think about it, when you start taking those veteran tanks with that AT gun bonus now. I'm just going to
And
let
the
that sink
gyro.
in. Just start thinking about that. I think we're going to see a lot more veteran U.S. tanks hitting the field with
Right.
those gyros. And then, of course, the air superiority was just, the same as is, and the modern communications, same as is. So, the U.S. got a little bit of a change, not a terrible one. A lot of people might miss that maneuver and fire, but I think they're going to appreciate those extra shots. And like I said, combined with like the ability to doing those anti-tank things, I think they're going to do some really crazy fun stuff.
So the
British, yeah,
U.S. air rules going to stay the same.
yes. Now
Okay. And,
the airstrike rules are going to change a little bit. Like rookie got changed, so if you roll
that
the
needed
rookie
changing.
now, yeah,
Right.
you don't get to put it anywhere. It's now within 12 inches of wherever that target is, and if there's no other available target, you just take an extra D3 pins. Move on. So it's not quite as bad now to roll that one air on that airstrike as
Right.
before, which is what was always the bane of a U.S. player. So U.S. players rejoice. You're going to actually get to enjoy now, not necessarily something washing back on you like before.
Right.
Now, of
Let's
course,
talk
as we
about
all,
let's talk
yeah,
about that extra die. I got to tell you, been a student of World War II for a long time, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you've heard me reference a game called Squad Leader, and
oh yeah,
in SL, the American squads have about 50% more firepower than the Germans because of the presence of the M1s and the
mm-hmm.
BARs, at least the naked squad, and I think I think the extra die for every three really suits the Americans more with their M1s
I
than the
agree.
fire and maneuver did.
Well, that also shows like the semi-automatic rifles. It
Yep.
really takes into account a lot of things like that, which I think was really missing from the second edition. And everybody's like, "Well, I see automatic rifles on the sprue, but they're not really any special." Well, now they're kind of factored in.
Right. Will the BAR count toward that third weapon? So it won't be just
Uh,
every three rifles; it'll be every three
I
weapons.
think I'd have to go back and look. I don't think the bar does count to that. I think it's actually just regular
Okay.
rifles.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to confirm that one with you later. I don't want to give something incorrect.
Saints, no, no, that's not. We're not here to play gotcha, brother. I
No,
promise.
no.
But yeah, okay. So that's I kind of like that change. I made full use of fire maneuver. I run US, but hey, extra dice on the table is always a good thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm sure we got a lot of British players that are probably like, well, what's going on? What's changing with us? And their big thing is of course, we all know the free stuff went away. So, but you got a bonus gift. You got a great gift back, British players. You got artillery support. That means now you can do like the U.S. with 2 artillery strikes, just like they can with their airstrikes.
Oh
Pretty
my
darn good
goodness.
deal. You still got to buy
I've
your observer, but wow.
I've always thought the British artillery rules were a little overstated. Uh Still do, but that's okay. Their narrative for is the British had such good artillery. I
Yeah.
always heard that the Soviets had the good artillery. That they just if it moved, it was getting shelled. So we'll
Well,
talk
the
about
fire
that, I
for
guess.
effect is still there for the Soviets, and we'll get into that one in a minute. Now,
Okay.
everybody always wants to know what's going on with the national characteristics. The classic 5 are still there, and they did shift slightly. Like up and atom at this point requires you to make basically an order test. If you fail the order test, if you have a unit within range, then you can re-roll the order test. So it's not automatic anymore. I believe it was automatic before then.
Yep.
Blood curdling charge, pretty much the same, except they did clarify that inexperienced does not benefit from it now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was a huge because I think there were some people that were running inexperienced and doing the blood curdling charge, and I don't know if that really worked for them or not, but they changed that. The toughest boots, and the rapid fire, you basically got the hand to hand and the shooting options where every
Yep.
3 you get 1 free. Vengeance kind of changed a little bit too. Vengeance is for veterans and regular now. And if they have an enemy within 12 inches, they roll before they take an order test. And if so, on a 4, 5, or 6, they get to automatically shed a pen off. So that's
Nice.
pretty cool. So if you
Yeah.
got somebody nearby and it's kind of critical for you to charge or get out of the way, that's what you want.
That can be a life. That can be a game changer right there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, particularly if you got those Gurkhas that have taken a couple of shots and then now they're trying to stagger around, trying to figure out what's going on, and they're going, "Ooh, yeah, I need to get those Gurkhas out of the way," kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Speaking of which, I think the Gurkhas are going to be a really popular kid very soon with the new
Oh.
Tough Fighter rule. The Tough Fighter rule did change, and Tough Fighters now allows rerolls for misses.
Oh.
Yeah, here, let me pull the
Oh.
pin on the hand grenade and hand that one to you.
Right. That's because it was reroll for hits.
Now it's
Now it'll
reroll
be
for misses.
okay. With the way I roll dice, that could be handy. I'll have to build me some Gurkhas to go with my Sikhs.
Yeah, that was the way I looked at it. I'm like, well, that's actually a benefit if I take actually anything with Tough Fighters now, because that might bail me out of some of my bad dice rolling.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you saw any of the pictures from this weekend, I got my black powder shirt on, but the name on it's still the same. Bad Dice Baker.
I need
It's
bad dice
legendary.
Ballinger.
There we go. I like it. All
Well,
right.
let's
So
talk
that's
about
that.
the. You want to talk about the Russians?
Let's talk about the Russians. Yeah. So they lose their extra squad, which
Oh yeah,
in the basic book, and I know as you went into the different army books and stuff, the British seem to get a lot of extra squads here or there, but or the campaign books, it always made sense to me that the Russians got that extra free squad because Russians, and they're pulling that off now. So what trade offs are the Russians going to get in exchange for that?
Well, they still have the Great Patriotic War, so they still get the reroll for leadership. They still have the not one step back for their commissar, and they still have the mass batteries. You know where you had that rule. A lot of those rules are unchanged. Now they did get for the motherland. For the motherland is pretty similar to what we were talking about before, except it actually applies to inexperienced squads in the Russian army. So if you have an enemy unit within 12 inches of an inexperienced Russian squad, they can roll before they take their order test to see if they shed a pin marker off. So if you imagine, like, if you're running like a lot of Strafbot or militia or something, and you have that commissar there, being able to kind of encourage them along, plus you could potentially shed some pins off. You've got a really good mechanical army of a lot of inexperienced, crazed fanatics that could be potentially running towards you with like a bunch of angry Russians. So that's not too bad,
Yeah, yeah. Again, that based on what we've read about Russian history, that's not too far from the truth.
Oh
So
yeah.
again, that seems to fit the history pretty good. Okay, cool. That works.
So I guess we can
Let's
talk
see.
about the House of the Rising Sun or Japan.
The Japanese, yeah.
Now they took some big changes on this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I think once everything sets in, I think initially a lot of people might kind of freak out, but I think
Ah,
once you kind of see what the Japanese can do, they're going to be good. Of course, they get their fanatics still, but fanatics is kind of slightly changed where um, you basically don't get pinned out. If you lose in hand to hand combat, it's a draw. You keep fighting. The biggest thing is that they don't auto pass things like they
oh,
used to. They can
that
they're,
can be
they're
huge.
it's more like stubborn now, where
Okay.
they'll be able to still test against their full leadership no matter what their pins are.
Hmm.
So the likelihood of having a better quality troop is going to then advance. And so the fanatic rule isn't that bad. It's just shifted just a little bit to something a little bit
Okay.
more reasonable than just I can't stop these Japanese from just washing over me like a tidal wave. And
Randy experienced that Saturday. He
yeah,
played a little bit different group, and boy, and it was real interesting because our tournament did not have a single German army in it. The Axis players were all Japanese, unless you count the Italian player, and he, just depends on the day for him,
well, I'm just
But
sorely disappointed there was no Hungarian or Finns.
yeah, yeah. Well, the Hungarian player had something else he was doing. He's gone back
Uh,
to school, so we didn't have him coming out, and nobody in our group plays Finns yet. So if you're watching this and you're in Savannah, we need Finns.
come
So
come
yeah, but the
talk to me. I'll,
Japanese.
I'll help you out with the Finns.
So yeah, it was definitely interesting to see all the Japanese armies on the table, and we even had one round where Japanese fought Japanese. I think they said the Plum faction was fighting the Lotus faction or something like that. It was great. They had a good time with it.
Mm, wow. Plum wine versus sake. There we go.
There we go.
Now the bonsai did also kind of flip a little bit. It's
Mhm.
when you're now trying to order to do a charge. If you fail that order test, you can re-roll it if you have an enemy unit within range. So
Okay.
it's not that bad. It's not automatic anymore, which I think was where the frustration of a lot of opponents to the Japanese kind of came in. Is there wasn't a chance for the Japanese to fumble. So unless the player
Right.
fumbles in play, there was nothing that could really be done. So
Yeah, that was one of the things I think all the Japanese players agreed with is the Japanese in version 2 were an army where a lot of your die mechanics were just not present, and it made it an army
yeah,
that was a little bit more reliable. May not have had the cool tanks, may not have had the sexy machine guns as much, but man, those guys were going to keep on coming, and that makes a huge difference at that scale.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah, our winning army was actually a French army. He did very well, which was kind of cool. One of the things I've always said about the French at the squad level that and even against later war, French troops can be pretty solid. So that was pretty fun. I know the guys were. I've seen some comments too that I know one of my players is an Italian player, and I guess their rule book or their PDF is not due to come out for a while. And I
Well,
think that's go ahead.
the clarification that I have heard is
Mm,
that everybody's going to get you by lists. So everybody's going to get something. Italians are going to get something. The French are going to get something. The Finns are going to get something. I can definitely tell you not everything's in the rule book for all the core five. And so you're going to see things that obviously are going to be coming back in the faction books. Like the Germans, for example, the Goliath is not in the rule book, but
right.
it never was in the second edition rule book. It came out
Nope.
in the expansion. And so
Mhm.
I can kind of see how they kind of surgically went through and said, what are the essential pieces and what is the goodies we're going to then put into the book later so people can kind of enjoy that flavor being reintroduced back. And overall, I think what they did was really, really good. And honestly, if you look at what they put in second edition when they released it versus what's in the third edition, they really compiled a lot of stuff and really chopped a lot of stuff in there. So I think that
Yeah.
everybody's going to be very happy with the lists of options that are in there now. Is there going to be like all the goofy stuff? No, but you could pretty much almost play with anything with no problem, and you're not going to go, oh well, I have to wait for the book now to come out before I can kind of put this into the list. Um,
Right.
so I think that's going to be really, really good. And talking about the French, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen now with the loss of the free artillery and the
Right.
free inexperience for the take three. I'm kind of curious what's going to happen. So
Hmm.
I'm excited. I'm a little kind of curious what's going to happen. I'm going to be like the kid, on the day that they drop the PDFs. I'm immediately going to dig in. I want to see what's been done to the French. I
Right.
also want to see what's changed for the Finns. And I'm kind of got my fingers crossed that they might be able to allow the medics to actually be able to shoot their rifles. Because, historically, the Finns and the Russians medics shot at each other. And particularly the Finns gave their medics rifles because sometimes they couldn't get a pistol or something. And often they armed their medics because snipers shot at them.
Right.
you know? And so they armed themselves better. And I was kind of disappointed when second edition came out and basically said, no, we're not going to allow snipers to shoot the out of medics. And I was like, all right, well, that kind of defeats the whole entry for the Finns to be able to take a rifle. So I'm kind of hoping that kind of sways back. And with them looking at snipers now, I'm kind of hoping that they may put the medic back into play with being able to carry the rifle and do something. And
So
I'm
have you used the medic in your games? So I don't think
I,
I've ever seen a game where the medic was used.
I've used medics a lot.
Okay.
I actually do that with my Finns. I'll sometimes even just put a medic in, and I'll just have them sit there between the lines and just go, okay, I've got everybody covered. And I've done it with French, and when you run a mass number of French, it works pretty good.
Okay. I
You
might
just
have
got
to
to
give
be
that a
you just got to
try.
be clever with it.
Got to be what?
Clever with them so they don't get
Okay.
killed.
Yeah. I don't know, man. You read some of the stuff, you don't want to mess with Doc because either Doc's going to come at you or more likely the troops are coming at you and then you're in trouble. So, but yeah, okay. Yeah. So and hey, folks, if you're listening, if you've played with medics, drop in the comments and tell me what you think. Like I say, my group, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody play with medics. I'm not even sure I would know how to do it. It's just not been on the radar list. So that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, so, and that takes us now to some of the special rules we know about snipers. Are the medic rules changing? Do we know if you had a chance to dig that deep yet?
I haven't really kind of went too in depth into the special rules.
Sure.
Definitely, medics really haven't changed too much. To be honest, a lot of the special rules kind of, for the most part, walked away fairly intact. I think the biggest change was again the tough fighters. I think that was
Um,
probably the biggest splash more than anything
hmm,
out of that. I think the engineers role, you've already seen the engineers where they can charge in and they can ignore cover now, so the engineers can kind of lap that. Cavalry, the only thing that really kind of changed in cavalry is cavalry doesn't benefit from cover as much. So if you have like cavalry behind soft cover because you're mounted on a horse, it's easier to hit you. So,
Right.
well, made a lot of sense.
Does.
Incidentally, cavalry also went up a point. So when you buy your
Well, that's
horses,
interesting.
yeah, you'll have to pay a little extra for the hosses now.
Huh.
Of course,
I've
you got
seen
the
a
field.
lot of I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of cavalry in the games, which kind of surprised me. I know a couple of the French players fielded cavalry squads. I
Mhm.
think I saw an Italian player that fielded some cavalry. So it's definitely out there.
I'm going to miss my Mongolians until the Russian book comes out, because unfortunately they didn't make it in. But because I love that, being able to shoot from the saddle and have a unit rides on horses that can shoot rifles. So I'm definitely going to miss that one.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
now their army book hasn't come out, so it may still be in there.
well, I'm sure it will be in the future. It's just in
Right.
the get you by list. The Mongolians are really only just represented by now cavalry, a generic cavalry entry. So
Uh,
uh, gotta
yeah.
wait, gotta wait. But eventually, once that new book comes out, um, I think you're gonna we'll see those, like I said, those classics coming back, like the Goliath, the Mongolian cavalry. They're going to be there still.
Right. And I've seen some interesting builds with partisan lists, so I'm be curious. Are they going to have a get you by list for partisans?
Yeah, yeah. I've pretty much heard that almost every one of the lists will have something.
Oh, good. Because last thing anybody wants to have to do is put their toys on the shelf. That ain't no fun. So
No, and
that's
that's one
good.
thing
That's
that
good to hear.
and that's one thing I've always gotten the sense of Warlord is they care about their customers, and that even if they acknowledge that yes, it's going to take time to get these books out, please be patient. But in the meantime, we're still going to let you play with your little plastic and metal dollies and have a little bit of fun. And I really respect that, because I think that really shows that. And like I said, even the get you by list really kind of, everybody's like, well, what if I got this really weird tank? Well, you can still take it as this entry. Oh, okay. I'm good with that, and I think a lot of people will be very, very happy with that. Now, talking about changes is, let me shock you with a couple of fun numbers now.
Okay.
Panzerfaust,
Right.
the bane of everybody else who plays the Germans. Panzerfaust have shot up to a 15-point cost now
Her.
per Panzerfaust.
And so what was it? 5 before?
5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
That's
I'm
honestly
gonna
probably a little bit more realistic.
but I'm gonna paint the picture. Two things. One, first off, sniper cannot pick them out because they're not a
Fair
team.
enough.
They're
Right.
not an officer. They can't pick out the Panzerfaust. Two, the +2 to hit and point blank, which, what's the range on a Panzerfaust? 12. What's the odds of
Right.
you being within 6? Pretty high. So you're going to get a +2. So you're going to start with a 4 and be hitting a tank on potentially a +2, a 2. You move a 3. I mean, you're going to have a 50-50 chance to hit with some Panzerfaust that's going to just really knock out a tank. So I
Right.
think there's some balancing factors in there. It took me a little bit to get over to sticker shock, and then I went, okay, let's just steady for a second. I see this. This is
Yeah.
good. I think 5 might have been a little cheap. 15 might be a little bit a little pricey. I probably would say 10 would have probably been the charm, but we'll see how 15 goes, and then we'll talk about it in
Yeah.
4.
15. And if light machine guns are still 20, yeah, that's I can see. I agree with you. I would have thought 10 would have made a little bit more sense. Did machine guns go up?
They went down.
Oh,
LMGs are
jeez.
LMGs are now 15. They're going to be the kids' favorite. Germans are going to be loading up with LMGs now because they're going to get that extra shot. So now you're going to be carrying around, a 5-shot LMG in a German unit. In the British, they're going to enjoy those Vickers now even more,
Yeah.
because they're now actually a little bit of a price cut. So instead of going, wow, if I don't take the machine gun, I can put 2 extra guys in. Well, now I can get 4 shots and take the Vickers, and I can get 5 shots, which is more than I can generate from getting 2 extra guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good deal.
Yes.
And of course, we mentioned bars. Bars went up 1 point. They're now 6 instead
Not
of 5.
not sure that's fair because the Americans generally don't have LMGs, but I'm a little biased.
Yeah, but I think it's fine. I always found
Yeah.
bars to be a little bit underpriced, considering
Okay.
you got what 30 inches and 2 shots, while the Germans are still eating 5 points for assault rifles at 18 at 2 shots. Yeah, uh, I would like to go to the court on that one, sir.
That's
The
one thing too is people talk points. And of course you got a variety of people that play bolt action. You got the
Yes.
guys, that are just gamers and they like the World War II, clothes that this game comes in. And I think that's still a very strong way to describe it.
Hmm.
Um, most, and it took me a long time to get my head around this, but most of your historical miniature games are really trying to rate the units not for rarity, because the comment you made about the German assault rifle. Well, it was fairly rare up until like late '44, whereas
Then
the
they were
bar
giving them
was
away like
rather
candy
common.
and party favors.
Do what?
Then they were giving them away like candy and party favors.
Right, right. So one of the things that miniature games generally don't account for is rarity. They're trying to balance everything by what we would call combat points. So I like that, and once you realize that's kind of where it's coming from, it makes some of the crazier lists like a puma in every pot. It's like, come on, guys, really? Well, yeah, really, because we're just buying by combat points.
Here's another juicy one. Everybody's
Oh,
personal friend, and now that we're seeing lots of hype on the engineers, flamethrowers.
oh yeah,
30 points from 20.
makes sense because they were
But
everywhere.
the rules for flamethrowers have not changed.
Uh
So
oh,
they're as
still
equally
nasty.
as deadly, but they've went up in points. But again, think about it. Some of the other stuff has dropped in points, so there's a
Right?
balancing act.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think everybody will be quite happy with like a lot of the changes that are in there. It's going to take some acclimation time.
Oh, that's
Um,
half the fun.
and I guess speaking of acclimation, we're going to be talking about lists. And what we're probably going to
Yep.
be seeing in like tournaments and on the game tables at the clubs and the game stores and things like that. And of course, like I said earlier, what's going to be popular? Tough fighters. Tough fighters are definitely
Yeah.
going to be a fan favorite. And I hope Warlord Games, if you're listening and you do not have a good stock of Gurkhas, stock up. I have a feeling that every British player in the world, if they do not own Gurkhas, will be ordering at least a box.
Nice.
At bare minimum now. They're going to be like, wow, I am sold. And throw in some toughest boots or the blood curdling charge. And
Oh Lord.
ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not going to be a pretty sight.
I
So
think
make
the
sure that, make
Gurkhas are
sure,
still a metal kit, but Warlord could do worse than to come out with a plastic kit now that the Gurkhas are going to be so potent. Although having a single
yep.
squad at a time might be a little better.
Warlord Games, tip Michael Baker if you make plastic Gurkhas. There you go.
Wow.
I
I'm
think,
definitely going to have to put a couple squads in stock. I can tell that.
yeah, I think they're going to be a very popular kid.
Nice.
I'm not going to. Armored transports. We've heard about the armored transports.
Yes.
Getting the
Yeah.
buff that they can actually now not pop automatically. They're going to get to potentially roll to stay on the battlefield. And on average, I can tell you that most vehicles and transports have dropped like 10 to 20 points.
And that makes sense because what everybody is kind of sniffing around is that with us having to field actual platoons. So if you want to, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read it, if you want to field a tank, you've got to take it as a platoon, which is going to be, I would think, no less than 2 vehicles.
Correct. It's 2
Um,
vehicles. Mm-hmm.
right. So that's going to be, you're going to have that bite going on. And I did this just this last weekend. I prepped a list potentially to have to play in our tournament. I ended up not playing which was very cool because nothing's tougher than trying to TO and play at the same time. You wouldn't know about that, right? So what I did is I built a really strong Fallschirmjäger list on one side, light personnel, but I added in a couple half tracks.
Hmm.
The 251 9, I think it is, with light anti-tank gun, and then a Stug, and then what I did is a second platoon with regular infantry, and then a Stug in support. So I had effectively that same type of formation. I just had it built out a little differently. So I guess in the new rules, we would have to have a headquarters. I'd be curious to see how they're going to adjudicate headquarters for armor, whether it's going to be one of the fighting tanks or if you're going to have to take a command vehicle.
Well, your choice is basically like they already. I think they showed it in like the first intel. Is you can either take a vehicle that has the command rule. If it doesn't have the
Right.
command rule, you pay 10 points. It's got it. You're
That's right.
done.
I remember reading that.
Yeah.
So back to my example, I could still field those two Stugs and just declare
Yeah.
one of them to be the HQ, which
Yep.
is how the real world works. Just an extra 10 points. I like it.
And you didn't have to buy two platoons now.
That's right. That's right. So just players take heart. We just described converting my force from V2 to V3 just
In
by
seconds.
just by or huh
Just in
from second
seconds.
to third, right? With just some point adjustments. So that's pretty cool. I think a lot of people are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to completely rework my army. Sometimes, speaking of armored transport, I am seeing players shift away from trucks and start looking at more some of the armored transports that have always been out there, but they cost more points. Had an Italian player pick up that Italian armored APC that they used. And because he was asking me, he said, well, I need the XYZ. I'm like, I got it in stock. He's like, really? I said, yeah. So he went ahead and picked it up. So the armored transports are going to get to be more of your friends.
Well, you mentioned the 250 with the anti tank gun.
Right.
Think about it. That thing's dropped 10 to 20 points, and you got that nice juicy anti tank gun on there that's getting that perk now with the anti tank gun rule.
Right.
Ooh. That and carrying 8 guys, that is going to be the German fan favorite right there. You're going to see everybody sporting one of those, and there's going to be so many other transports you're going to see hitting out there. I think you're going to see Bren carriers. One of my personal favorites is the Landschleffen the big boat with the
God bless
tank
you.
tracks. And no one ever took them because they were like 60 points soft skin. Now they're like 40 points. So now it's like, okay, I could take something that's the price of a truck now, and I can hold 20 dudes in it, and it looks really cool. Okay.
Right. That's awesome. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just going to be way too much fun. I know I've been looking at adding more Bren carriers already to my British force. I'm
Yes.
doing British North Africa. And right now I've got it set up with 3 squads of 6, and then because I got the gentleman's war starter kit, so I went
Good
I
choice.
went more I went more maneuver elements. So I did 3 squads of 6, ATR, mortar, 2-man command team. Um, now I can add. If I wanted to bulk that up, I could add three Bren carriers, and now the whole thing's mechanized. And oh, by the way, has an extra machine gun. So yeah.
But not only that, but you could take some of those as your reconnaissance recce unit
Hmm.
platoon and pay extra 10 points and get recce on all of your brain carriers.
Yeah.
And that could
Then
be
they're
even
doing
more
double
fun.
duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
got a
That
lot of
recce rule
options
is
there.
yeah. And that recce rule now is the recce rule still going to be in play? Do we know?
The recce rule is still the same. It,
Oh, good,
it
good,
looks like really not a lot has changed for the recce rule.
good. That's one of those rules that I think everybody agreed was reasonable and fair. That if a recon unit is not activated and they see somebody creeping up on them, they're going to get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah. I thought the first edition version of recce was a little bit too powerful. I think second was a little bit too much of a hard pull. I was kind of hoping that they would kind of take an idea of mine, which is if you already have an activation, you roll a dice based on the level of what the skill of the unit was. So if you were veteran, it would go off on a 3. If it was inexperienced, it would go off on like a 5 or a 6, depending on what it was.
Yeah.
And you could still recce, but it's all determined on like whether or not they just saw it coming after they've already been taken an action, which I thought was a balancer. But I think the current recce rules are fine as is. You just got to be
Yep.
more strategic, and
Yes.
I think that's the big thing. Um, I think we're definitely going to see a lot of also machine gun teams. I think we're going to see everybody taking those out and going.
Oh yeah, we have made machine guns great again. MMGA. Mega.
And you should make a
But yeah,
T-shirt for that and put Gator Games, making machine
make
guns great
machine
again.
guns great again. That's not a bad idea. But yeah, you're right. Machine guns are going to come back into their own where they should have always been and
Well,
become a significant force.
what's sexy is going to be the Russians and the Americans being able to take those heavy machine gun teams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want
Yeah.
to talk about something that's going to be sexy? That's going to be that. Um, Mortar teams dropped in points too. So they've shaved them down a good bit. So mortars are very, very viable, and it even now looks like you can take spotters for inexperienced mortar teams as well.
I heard that, and I heard that you can actually take. Yeah, and I guess you always could take a spotter for each mortar, but there again, you're going to run your mortars as a section. And so you're gonna, now there I would absolutely pay the extra points to get a headquarters unit for them, and then pay for the spotters and have a good solid mortar section. One of the things that's always kind of disappointed me though, and I'm sure they're not going to address it, but historically it was the officers that could call in as well. And I'm sure they didn't add that in, but that would have been highly useful. Would have made that first or second lieutenant even more valuable, probably more
Well,
vulnerable too.
I think the snap two kind of reflects that a little bit,
Okay.
because imagine if you take that platoon section and you now take, I don't know, two or three machine guns, and you take a heavy machine gun and you have two or three mortars, and then you have that officer sitting there that's like a captain who's now going mortar fire, machine gun fire, heavy machine gun fire. And can you just imagine your opponent's look on the other side of the table?
Right. Yeah, that's true. He's gonna pop all those off and hammer you before you can move. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So everybody was kind of scratching their head. Okay, what good is an extra command team besides more points? You
Merry
just
Christmas.
described it. Even if it's a heck, I'm a tightwad, so I'm still running a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant. Well, no, now it's just a company officer, and they get two commands. So yeah, you
It,
can pop your whole mortar section.
it's a
Boom,
platoon or
boom.
a company.
Right. And so that's a fair point. And then you make full advantage of those spotters. And the thing is, the officer won't have to see the target for the spot to tell the mortar team to tell the spotters to spot for it. So,
Spotters, go
all
find
right,
me.
free tactical school here, guys. You heard it here first. How to get the most out of your Version 3 mortars? Okay. Right now, I field one, but of course, I'm going to have to get that second. And I'm already seeing people pick up those extra mortars to make up those mortar sections. So it's going to
I'm
get real
blowing the dust
interesting.
off.
Do what?
I'm blowing dust off.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done much with mortars. I usually go with the medium machine gun in spite of their vulnerability, and I've generally got pretty good use out of them. I try and give the snipers other things to shoot at, like I don't know, my two light machine gun German maneuver element that is about 5 men and runs around the table shooting 10 dice at people. So it'll be, and that ain't going to change. That's still going to be a viable option. Wow, this is exciting. This
I
is going
think
to be
you
really good.
I think other things you're going to see on the shopping list for people is auto cannons, which really
Yep.
dropped in points, and
Right.
of course the anti-tank guns. Now that you can take sections of support weapons,
Right.
and interesting enough, howitzers are going to actually maybe take a little bit of a backfield. I think we're going to, howitzers ignore the cover saves, which is the big change for into third from second, but I think we're going to see a lot more medium howitzers than the heavy howitzers because the heavy howitzers are losing their D6
Right.
pins. They're going to go to D3. So I think you're going to see our new norm potentially maybe just being the medium howitzer because unless you want like the larger template and the +4, it's not worth it. Um,
Right.
I think we're also going to see probably maybe a little downturn of the DACA vehicles, kind of like what we talked about before.
Right.
You're not really losing too much. Like a Stewart used to do 18 shots, now it's I think it's 10. So it's not quite as bad as everybody kind of makes it out, but it's like okay, but machine guns are really good, and I think with like some of the changes to the penalties for the shooting, like removing long distance and things like that, and is really just going to make it easier to use those machine guns. So I think it's going to work out on the average. Um,
Yep.
and I think kind of like what we were talking about with platoons, I think you're actually going to start seeing a lot of people having at least two platoons now going forward. In the past, you pretty much only sometimes saw some people doing one or two or maybe three, but three started getting really kind of very min max, very, very kind of lean to usually achieve some goal like I want extra tanks or I want extra this. And I think
Right.
now we're going to see an era of at least two platoons, and we're probably going to see most players running maybe three or four platoons now.
That many, you think, at 1250?
I think so.
Okay. And I haven't, generally I play airborne or I play Fallschirmjäger, so I'm running higher end troops, but I'll have to break the books out and kind of take a look and see what I can do with my regular guys.
Well,
Oh no. I
let's
might
take your
I might have to
Fallschirmjäger.
buy another box of Germans.
Let's take your Fallschirmjäger. All right,
Right.
you got your rifle squad. Now you can take a support weapons section with machine guns and mortars and goodies like that. Then
Right.
you can take a tank, like a one or two support tanks, or even a tank and maybe a Kubel wagon with a machine gun or something, just to kind of add a little bit of mobile firepower or something. You could even go put a recce squad in now, or even Fallschirmjägers were renowned for having a lot of like AT guns and things like that.
Right.
They utilized a lot of those in particularly in the later war when they got delegated to, okay, you're no longer jumping out of planes and being airborne. You're elite infantry, and
Right.
oh, by the way, we're going to need you to start doing these other tasks now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like here, have a Panzerfaust. Go hunt some Russian tanks. Oh, that'll be fun. What could go wrong? Yeah. So it's going to be, man. Again, the more I hear about version 3, I've been a bolt action fan for a while. I played some of version 1, and then got into it seriously with version 2. But the more I hear about version 3, the more I'm like, yeah, this is at its core still going to be the same game that I've always enjoyed. I'll have to watch
Yeah,
for a few rule changes. I'm sure that long distance is going to bite me once or twice. I think the cover rules will probably be the most thing that I have to really get used to. This is not the first game I have that does that, but it does take a little getting used to. So I want to say Black Powder uses a cover save, but I could be wrong.
I think you're
But
correct. It's been a
yeah,
while
and
since
it's
I've done
take
any black powder.
we can fix that. Come on down to Savannah. We'll fix that right up for you. So okay, well, very good. We're kind of up on our time here.
Yep.
Patrick, this is great. I want to thank you for taking time to do, because I know it's you. I can tell you've been doing a lot of reading, and God bless you, brother. Just the little snippets and the little breadcrumbs you dropped for us. I know I'm excited. You talked about three of my armies that I run. I run Germans, I run British, and I run Americans, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all giving up things, but they're all gaining things. Talk about the Panzerfaust. I ran the numbers one day, and I could get 14 Panzerfaust for the price of a Panzerschreck team. I'm like, 14 shots versus 6. Okay, I know which way I'm going. But even now, and I don't know what they've done with the cost of the Panzerschreck, but if it's still, I think it was 80 points. So at 15 points, you can still put 4 out, and potentially that's still 4 shots to 6. So that's still, and 4 shots that you can take at one time, which can be huge.
But
So yeah, that's good. Something worth
but
thinking about.
it allows them to shoot multiple times. They got a longer range, and I will also say it is still 80 points for the regular, but the veterans went down. Enough said.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Wow.
imagine now having a veteran team out there running around, hiding in the
Yep.
woods somewhere in a building.
That'll change the taste of your schnitzel.
Mm-hmm. Eins Bier
So
bitte.
yeah, yeah, jawohl. Yeah, I always generally for weapons teams I would take veterans anyway, so they're more survivable. But
Mm-hmm.
man, that's going to be amazing. Wow. Okay, what else can you tell us to wrap things up other than keep watching? They're going to continue with the intelligence drops, yes?
Yeah, yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna still get little bits of intelligence drops. I think Warlord's putting out a video talking about a lot of the changes. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more intelligence feeds out there talking about more and more of what's going to go out there. And I think as you know, as the Raiders start rolling out to stores, and we're going to start running demos and things like that, and start talking to the community more and answering questions, I think we're really going uh, to be absolutely honest, every time I open this PDF, I'm finding new surprises every time, and
That's fantastic.
I think that's going to delight people. That
Hmm.
that every time they open the book, they're going to go, "What? I didn't. That was subtle. Like one little sentence changed, and it totally changes the context of a rule now. Like, you know,
Hey, and we now set our FAQ pages back to 0.
thank you."
Yeah.
As a TO,
Uh,
I thank Warlord for that. Thank you.
Amen. Yeah, that was a lot to keep up with. That's for sure and certain. Wow. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you for your
Okay.
time, and I want to thank the audience for watching. I hope you found this valuable. If you did, as we always say, click like, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Share this with your friends. Share this with your gaming group. Let people know we're here. Let people know that we're talking about this. And of course, Gator covers a variety of gaming subjects. Right now, our hotness is pretty much bolt action because it's a major part of our community. But we cover other areas as well. And the only way to know what we're covering, of course, is to tune in and check back regularly. If you're subscribed, you'll get those updates. If you want to support the channel, you can always go over to gatorgames.com and buy some merch because that helps keep my lights on. All right. I want to thank you guys for your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Have a good one. Thanks for having me.